Well, to this, the Easter weekend is drawing near, and there are concerns that government could implement stricter lockdown regulations. Some religious leaders marched to Parliament, calling on government to allow them to fill venues to full capacity. So let's discuss religious gatherings and safety as we head to Good Friday. Joining us from Pretoria is the General Secretary of the South African Council of Churches, Bishop Malusi Mpumlwana. Bishop, it's always a pleasure talking to you. And here we are again, in the same sort of theme around safety, yet people wanting together, wanting to worship and observe Good Friday. But unfortunately, the dark cloud of COVID-19 still upon us. I mean, what's the general sort of consensus and feeling amongst congregants and religious leaders heading to the Easter weekend?
Well, it's a very serious tension of two very important things. The first one is that the Good Friday and Easter celebrations are actually some of the most sacred and valuable in the spirituality of the Christian society in South Africa and everywhere in the world. And so it's one of those events which almost define a person's spirituality. And that is why there is so much pressure from churches to have the opportunity to open up worship. But that must then be measured against the very real possibility that we may overdo the coming together and sort of launch the third wave with super spreader occasions. Now, that's where the tension gets to be. And the religious leaders across the board have all asked for the same thing: the increase of numbers, not to be limited to 100 indoors, but rather to half the space of the venue. If it's 500 square meters, it should be 250. If it's 50 square meters, it must be 25. That's what they have asked for, and all of them have done that. Now, we've had a bit of a challenge with what does this mean if you got a 6,000-seater, such as, for example, the Apostolic Faith Mission in Germiston, Rhema Church, Bible, Grace Bible Church. These are big churches, and a number of them like that.
Right.
And they said, no, we're not asking for half that. We're asking for to max it at 1,000, because if you got a 6,000-seater, 1,000 people have got plenty of space for social distancing, and these churches have got the facilities and the expertise to actually monitor. So that's really what the claim is, and that's the request. However, whatever we do, it will have to be up to government to decide, because we also know that they get advised by scientists who think differently. We are law-abiding, we'll do what is required. But I think that whatever we do, as SACC, we are saying we're committed to the drive to drive down the infection, and therefore, whatever you do, wherever you are, sanitize, mask, and everything that needs to be done must be done appropriately.
Right. I mean, I understand sort of the concerns coming from congregants, because they have felt left out in, the resolution to, this pandemic. They believe, and I'm talking about religious and Christian, congregants, that they want to be a part of the solution. They want to be in prayer. They want together. It's not just the vaccine they believe is the solution, but prayer and answers from God. And my question to you, Bishop, is that is it not possible to sort of make peace with the fact that perhaps majority of Christian congregants might need to observe the sacred sort of Easter holiday and weekend at home? Is there sacredness with the infrastructure? Is that the issue, that the infrastructure holds much more significance than doing it in isolation at home or even observing the sermon online?
It is not the infrastructure. It is the effect of common worship, which is really what is essentially the purpose of Christian worship, is togetherness. Otherwise, we don't need to come to church on Sunday. You always do it at home. So there's no issue. There's no question about the fact that there are people who almost only really go to togetherness at Easter. But I should also take into account that the viewing online is really something that the urban suburbia can do. Most people in the rural areas will not have the online option at all, and it just means that there is no worship. But then I must also say that most of the small churches, which is usually fine, will be able to worship. They probably won't be much more than 100 anyway. So most churches would be very satisfied with a small number. The issue is that you've got large churches and large congregations, and these are the ones which need more of this, but also they are the ones who have got most of the equipment you need and most of the expertise you need. We remain with a view that says, for your safety, stay away from crowded worship spaces. Stay away from crowded queues and malls. Stay away, because this is really the thing to do.
Yes.
But we have to say that people need the space for their own spiritual edification as well as counseling, and there's something in the people's spirituality that gives them the go for a lot more to withstand the pressures and the depression of the time.
Well, Bishop, before I let you go, we're still awaiting, a word from the president upon a report that he said he's expecting from the NCCC before he can, announce whether stricter regulations will be upheld or not, and if they are, what exactly they are in detail. But pending that, what is then your advice to religious leaders, because they are influential to their congregants? What is your advice to religious leaders ahead of the Easter holiday?
There is much regret amongst religious leaders that the government has not made an announcement up to this time, because it impedes on whatever planning they have to do. They don't know what to expect. And so because they don't know what to expect, it's difficult to say, are we planning for this number or that number? Are we planning for this? What should we be doing? Or are we having services at all? It really makes it difficult. We had hoped that the latest by Thursday, Friday last week, the president does something that then allows a week of preparation by religious leaders. So a lot of them feel it's unfair not to know until this late. Nevertheless, our view is we know that government is elected for the purposes of taking care of the interests of all South Africans. And we will have to accept that whatever decision they come up with will have been a decision that has been weighed across all the views that are essential, because at the end of the day, everybody holds government accountable for what happens in the country. And therefore, we regrettably, while we wait until this late, but when we do get to know, we'll have to work with what comes out. Our advice is, whatever the answer, every South African must make sure that you take into account the solidarity that is necessary with one another by making sure that you are not the source of the infection. And I would say, also, if I were conducting a service, I would say I would not want to have to bury anyone because I caused them the infection.